Tansi Angela Kasla, Ethan Tansky Nitsigasan. Hello everyone, my name is Ethan and I'm a second-year mentor with the Rural E-Mentoring BC program. Today I'm joining you on Musqueam lands, also known as UBC's Point Grey campus, on September 30th, which is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, in front of the Reconciliation Pole at UBC, to talk as an Indigenous person about what truth and reconciliation means to me. When I was first tasked with sharing my thoughts about what truth and reconciliation means to me as an Indigenous person, I felt a bit overwhelmed on how I could synthesize my thoughts into a brief video. Truth and reconciliation means so many diverse things to me and members in my community. But after some careful reflection, I think I've come up with a brief answer to this question that I'm happy to share with other mentors in the program and our mentees. The most important thing truth and reconciliation represents to me is an openness to change, and I'll give you a few examples of what I mean. First and foremost, for settlers to reach true reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous folks, we all need to change our perspective on how history is told. In the last few decades, lots of Canada's dark history has come to light, especially when it comes to things like residential schools, where Indigenous people were systematically abused. However, although lots of this truth has been uncovered, lots of truth and stories of survivors have not been upheld in government because in a colonial landscape, we often don't respect the storytelling and documentation that is traditional to Indigenous peoples. What I mean by this is in a colonial landscape, traditional forms of storytelling and oral history are not respected. In order to uphold the stories and respect the truth of all survivors of racialized violence in Canada, we need to change our perspective on this. We need to bear witness to the testimony of Indigenous peoples through whatever means they feel is suitable. This includes oral storytelling and tradition. A second important aspect of what truth and reconciliation means to me in terms of change is changing how we structure our government and politics. Specifically, I think it's important as we work towards truth and reconciliation to return unceded lands to the traditional stewards who are the First Nations who've occupied these lands for time immemorial before colonialization. Truth and reconciliation is not about placing blame on colonizers in Canada. What it is about is unveiling the truth of the harrowing history of Canada's treatment of Indigenous peoples, working towards reconciliation. Indigenous peoples lived for thousands of years on these lands before colonialization in true prosperity. To return to this, I think that it's important that we return the lands and the practices back to Indigenous people. Many of the issues we face in Canada, like global warming, food insecurity, and healthcare issues, were not issues before. If we return the lands, I think we'd see a very positive shift in the lives of not only Indigenous people, but also colonizers in the country. The last important aspect of change I think about when I think of truth and reconciliation is change on an individual level. How can you, as one person, take time out of your day to listen to the stories of Indigenous people, support Indigenous business, and learn about the Indigenous lands you're on? Those are all small changes you can make in your day that will help us work towards truth and reconciliation in Canada.